Have you ever watched someone tune a guitar from the wrong end? They're turning the pegs at the top, but the string they're adjusting runs all the way down to the bridge at the bottom. The tension comes from below, the sound changes above. I want you to hold that image for a moment, because what I'm about to tell you about your back and your face works on the same principle. There is a stretch you can do in 90 seconds, lying on the floor, that lifts tissue in your face that no needle, no filler, no toxin injection can reach. And the reason none of those treatments can reach it is that they're all working from the front. The pole, the thing that's dragging your brow and your cheekbones and the corners of your mouth downward, that pole is coming from behind you, from your back, from a continuous sheet of connective tissue that runs from the soles of your feet, up the back of your legs, along your entire spine, over your scalp, and anchors just above your eyebrows. When that sheet shortens, and it does shorten year after year, everything above it drops. I've watched this in practice for a long time now. Patients come in and they'll point at their jawline, or at the skin under their eyes, or at the heaviness across their forehead. And what they're describing isn't wrinkles, not primarily. What they're describing is position. Their features have moved, shifted downward and slightly backward. And when I ask them what they've already tried, the answers are remarkably consistent. Botox, fillers, facial massage, retinol, microcurrent devices. Some of these help, I want to be clear about that. Botox does exactly what it's designed to do. It relaxes the frontalis muscle across your forehead, which softens the lines that form when that muscle contracts. Fillers do restore volume in areas where fat pads have thinned. These are real interventions with real effects. But here's what I keep seeing. People get the treatment, they look in the mirror the next day or the next week, and the lines are softer, the volume is better, but the overall position of their face, the way it sits on their skull, hasn't changed. There's still a heaviness, a downward quality, something that the treatment addressed on the surface, but didn't reverse underneath. And I think most of you know exactly what I'm describing because you felt it yourselves. You've stood in front of the bathroom mirror after spending real money and thought, it's better, but it's not what I expected. That gap between what improved and what didn't is the gap this video is about. The reason that gap exists is mechanical, and it's not complicated once you see it. Thomas Myers, who spent decades mapping how fascia connects across the body, identified what he calls the superficial back line. This is a continuous plane of connective tissue, not separate muscles attached at endpoints, but a single unbroken sheet that begins at the plantar fascia under your feet, travels up through the Achilles tendon, through the gastrocnemius and hamstrings, joins the sacral lumbar fascia along your lower back, continues up through the erector spinae muscles flanking your spine, passes over the occipital bone at the base of your skull, and then, this is the part that changed how I think about facial aging, it continues forward across your scalp as the Galea Aponeurotica and inserts at the supraorbital ridge. That ridge is the bony shelf just above your eyebrows. Let me say that differently because it matters. The tissue on the sole of your foot and the tissue above your eyebrow are part of the same mechanical chain. Tension applied at one end of this chain is transmitted to the other end. Dr. Carla Stecco, whose dissection work at the University of Padua has done more to document fascial continuity than perhaps anyone working today, confirmed through cadaveric dissection that these connections are not theoretical, they are structural. They transmit force. A 2018 paper in the Journal of Anatomy demonstrated that the Galea Aponeurotica, the fascial layer across your scalp, transmits mechanical load bidirectionally between its occipital attachment at the back of your skull and its frontal attachment above your brow. When you pull from behind, things move in front. So what pulls from behind? This is where your daily life enters the equation, and honestly, where it gets a bit uncomfortable to think about. When you sit, your thoracic spine rounds forward. This is called thoracic kyphosis, and in small doses, it's completely normal. But across 15, 20, 30 years of desk work, driving, couch sitting, phone scrolling, The tissues along the back of your body adapt to that rounded position. They shorten. The erector spinae fascia gets tighter. The sacrolumbar fascia gets tighter. The connective tissue over your posterior neck gets tighter. And because this is one continuous chain, that shortening doesn't just affect your posture, it pulls the Galea Aponeurotica, your scalp fascia, backward and downward, which pulls the forehead tissue with it, which lowers the brow position, which changes where your cheekbones sit relative to your eye sockets, which drags the midface down. You've been watching this happen. Every year, a tiny fraction of a millimeter, individually invisible. Cumulatively, over decades, it's the difference between a face that sits high and open on the skull and a face that looks heavy, tired, droopy. A word I use deliberately because it describes a direction, and that direction is down, and the force creating that direction is behind you. Here's what I find remarkable. You've probably noticed this connection yourselves without having the vocabulary for it. You stand up after an hour of sitting and you catch your reflection and something looks different. A little more open, a little less heavy. You attributed it to lighting, or to being more awake, or to just feeling better. But what was actually happening was mechanical. When you stood up, your thoracic spine extended slightly, your posterior chain lengthened by a few millimeters, and the downward tension on your scalp fascia decreased. Your face didn't change shape, its position on your skull shifted. And it shifted because you changed the tension in your back. You were right to notice. You were right that something real was happening. What you didn't have was the explanation. So the observation stayed in that category of things you notice but can't act on. Now you can act on it. Before I give you the stretch, I want you to answer 3 questions about your own body, because the degree to which this matters for you specifically depends on how much your posterior chain has shortened. These are framework questions. They help you understand where you are so the stretch makes sense for your particular situation. First, stand up and try to clasp your hands behind your back with your arms straight, not bent at the elbows, fully extended, fingers interlaced behind your pelvis. Can you do it without rounding your shoulders forward to compensate? Most people over 50 cannot. That restriction isn't shoulder tightness, it's posterior chain shortening expressing itself at the shoulder girdle. Second, stand with your back against a wall, heels touching the baseboard. Without tilting your chin up, does the back of your head touch the wall? For a significant percentage of adults over 50, the answer is no. The thoracic kyphosis has progressed enough that the head sits forward of the wall by 2 or 3 centimeters. That forward head position is the same thoracic rounding that's shortening your superficial back line. Third, stand normally and try to look straight up at the ceiling by extending only your upper back, your thoracic spine, without arching your lower back or bending your knees. How far can you see behind you? 90 degrees would mean you're looking directly at the ceiling. Most people with significant posterior shortening can manage about 60 to 70 degrees before the lower back starts compensating. These 3 questions aren't tests you pass or fail. They're a map of how much your posterior chain has shortened, and by extension, how much that shortening might be contributing to the positional changes you've been noticing in your face. Now the stretch. Lie face down on a firm surface, the floor with a thin mat or a carpet, not a bed. You need something that doesn't give. Arms at your sides, palms facing upward toward the ceiling. Your forehead rests on the floor. Take 2 normal breaths here just to settle. On your 3rd exhale, begin lifting your chest off the floor by extending your thoracic spine. This is not a cobra pose, and it's not a Superman exercise. Your lower back should stay relatively quiet. The movement comes from between your shoulder blades. Think about the space between your scapula opening upward toward the ceiling, while your sternum reaches forward and slightly up. Your arms stay at your sides with palms up. Lift to the point where you feel a clear stretch along your entire posterior chain. You should feel it from between your shoulder blades, possibly through your posterior neck, and you might feel a pulling sensation across the back of your scalp. If you don't feel the scalp component, bring your arms slightly behind you, about 45 degrees from your torso, still palms up. This increases the load on the upper portion of the superficial back line, and you'll likely feel the stretch extend further up. Hold this position for 90 seconds, not 60, not 2 minutes. 90 seconds is the duration at which connective tissue begins to undergo viscoelastic deformation, a temporary lengthening that, with consistent repetition, becomes a more durable positional change. During the hold, breathe normally, but on every third or fourth exhale, see if you can extend a fraction further. Not forcing, finding. The tissue will give you a little more room each time if you don't fight it. After 90 seconds, lower slowly. Rest for 3 breaths. Then do it once more. 2 rounds, 3 minutes total, every morning. I want to be transparent about what this does and doesn't do. This stretch will not erase wrinkles. It will not substitute for Botox in the specific thing Botox does, which is chemical relaxation of a hyperactive muscle. What it does is address the positional component of facial aging that no front of face treatment can reach. The component that comes from behind. The component that makes your brow sit low, your midface heavy, your jawline soft. Not because of skin laxity or volume loss, but because the entire fascial chain running up your back has shortened and is pulling everything down from the posterior direction. Releasing that tension allows the tissues to return toward a position that injectable treatments can then work with far more effectively. Some of my patients who added this stretch to their existing aesthetic routines reported, and I heard this phrase enough times that it stuck with me, that their results finally looked like they felt right. Not more dramatic, just in the right position. The treatment was landing where it was supposed to because the underlying tension was no longer fighting it. You noticed something years ago that you couldn't explain. Your face looked different when you stood tall, different after a walk, different in the morning than in the evening. You were observing a real mechanical phenomenon. You just didn't have the map. Now you do. And what strikes me most is how many of us have been carrying this observation silently, assuming it was trivial or imagined, when it was neither. The pull was real. The direction was real. The connection between your thoracic spine and your brow ridge was measurable, documented, dissectable. And the people who study this tissue, the Steckos, the Meyers of the field, they've known about these continuities for years. The information existed. It just hadn't been connected to the specific frustration you were feeling when you looked in the mirror after a procedure and thought, something is still pulling down. Something still is. But now you know where the other end of that string is, and you've been tuning from the wrong end. 90 seconds on the floor changes that.